Anthony Bourdain was never just a chef. No way. He was a writer, a traveler, a truth teller, really a cultural force whose gravelly voice and unapologetic honesty changed how a whole generation saw food, travel, and the world itself. So, how did a journeyman cook become a global icon? Well, let's get into it.
This is the image so many of us have, right? The culinary bad boy, the rock star of the food world. People often called him the spiritual heir to journalist Hunter S. Thompson, and you can totally see why. It was that shared rebellious streak, that raw first-person storytelling, and that constant search for truth in the messy parts of society. He broke every rule of being a celebrity, and people absolutely loved him for it.
And this quote, it's just pure Bourdain, isn't it? No filter, zero pretense. It's that kind of point-blank, brutal honesty that became his trademark and the thing that drew millions of us into his world. But this whole global phenomenon thing, it didn't just happen out of nowhere. It was ignited by a single moment, a single article that basically launched him from a hot kitchen line straight onto the bestseller list. So how on earth did that happen? See, before all the fame, before the TV shows and the awards, Bourdain was a veteran of the New York restaurant scene. He'd spent decades in the trenches. He was a respected chef, for sure, with a ton of stories to tell, but he didn't really have an audience to tell them to. And the way his fame was sparked, it's just so improbable you almost couldn't write it. Bourdain pens this explosive, tell-all essay, but it was his mom, Gladys, who made the magic happen. She handed this unsolicited piece to a friend whose husband just happened to be the editor of The New Yorker. It was a total shot in the dark, and somehow it hit the absolute bullseye. And the explosion was, well, it was immediate, just lightning fast. The article hits in '99, and that leads to the blockbuster book, Kitchen Confidential, a year later. By 2002, he's already on television. Think about that. In just 3 years, he goes from a line cook to a name everyone knows. The velocity of his rise was just incredible. Okay, so we've seen how he blew up. But to really get why his voice connected with so many people, we've got to go back. We need to look at the decades of hard work in the trenches that gave him that undeniable, hard-earned authenticity. Bourdain's authority, his credibility, it all came from this world, what he called the culinary underbelly. This wasn't some concept he came up with. It was his actual life. He wasn't some TV personality playing a chef. He was the real deal who had survived the chaos and was now pulling back the curtain for all of us. You know, his path was anything but straight. He drops out of Vassar. His lifelong passion for food gets sparked by a single oyster he tried as a kid on a family trip to France. He graduated from the Culinary Institute of America and then paid his dues for 20 years before finally landing at Les Halles. Every single step of that grind shaped the man he would become. And he never, ever shied away from how brutal that life could be. This quote from Kitchen Confidential, it's not there just for shock value. It's a raw, brutally honest look at the drug-fueled world he navigated and survived. And that unflinching honesty, that's what made his storytelling so damn powerful. So the wild success of Kitchen Confidential, it basically gave him a whole new identity. He was no longer just a chef, he was a storyteller with a global stage. And with that came a brand new mission. And you can really track his evolution just by looking at his TV shows. He started out on the Food Network with A Cook's Tour, which was mostly focused on food and travel. But with No Reservations, and especially with Parts Unknown on CNN, his focus just got deeper and deeper. It became about culture, politics, the whole human condition, really, all explored over a shared meal. And this comparison right here, it really just puts his whole transformation into perspective, doesn't it? From a chef mastering classic dishes in one kitchen in Manhattan, to a Peabody-winning journalist sharing noodles and a beer with the President of the United States in a tiny restaurant in Hanoi. I mean, the scale of that jump is just staggering. But you know, that new life, it came with a heavy price. 250. That's how many days a year he was often on the road. Imagine that. This constant travel took an immense toll on his personal life and his relationships, and it was a sacrifice he spoke about very openly. So in the end, his legacy became about so much more than just food. Let's really dig into the lasting impact he left on all of us. His death in 2018 was, of course, a massive shock felt all over the world. It left this huge hole in the cultural landscape, but it also kind of cemented the importance of the ideas he fought for throughout his entire career.
He used his platform relentlessly. He was a fierce champion for the immigrant workers he called the backbone of the entire restaurant industry. He spoke out against sexual harassment, he used his voice to challenge racism, and he always argued for seeing the humanity and dignity in cultures that were different from our own. His work truly became a mission.
And maybe President Obama put it best. This was never just about finding the best meal in a foreign city. It was about using food as a bridge to connect with people, to break down some walls, and to make us all just a little less afraid of the unknown.
When you look back at it all, his entire journey, from the chaos of the kitchen to the farthest corners of the world, it really seems like it was all a search for an answer to this one big question. He really challenged all of us, didn't he? To be curious, to be open, and to just live with unapologetic honesty. His story kind of leaves us to ponder that same question for ourselves.